Mujib Bhai organized a conference on elections 2014. Some of us in this group were also present. It's a Tagore Hall, and you have a bearded Bengali, and in front of that a clean-shaved Bengali speak on a book. Basically, this book was my doctoral thesis at Oxford. I was based at Brasenose College and in the politics department. Now, before I discuss the book, let me first deal with certain conceptual issues which is very much present in the book. At the very beginning, just because there are the audience is very mixed, students and faculty members, so I must first deal with very basic conceptual issues, at least the kind of conceptual issues that I'm making in my book. So at the very beginning, I must differentiate between three distinct terms: Muslim or Muslim identity, Islamic or Islamic identity, and Islamist or Islamist identity. For this differentiation, I rely on how the Islamists have defined Islam, the religion, as a combination of deen, which is faith, dunya, the life, and dawala, the state. I argue that the term Muslim is a broad general category where both religious and non-religious persons can belong or identify with that category. Those people who do not practice Islamic religion in their everyday life but has faith in Islamic religion can be Muslims. So anybody who is born and brought up in a Muslim family but does not necessarily practice Islamic religion, in other words, does not necessarily pray 5 times or fast during the month of Ramadan, they are still can be Muslims according to my definition. Thus, Muslim word in my book is used to represent the collective of those societies and countries where the majority of the population has faith in Islamic religion, but does not view Islam as a complete way of life or initiate political struggles to establish an Islamic political order. Whereas, people belonging to the second category of Islamic are those who practice Islamic religion in their everyday life and might also believe that Islam is a way of life, but does not have a political agenda to establish a Sharia-based Islamic state. Right? So a person who is a religious Muslim, I'm telling that person as an Islamic person. But that religious person does not necessarily have a political agenda to create an Islamic state. Okay? He or she might think that Islam is a way of life, but it is not a complete way of life. Okay? So he or she treats Islam as a private matter, as a religious matter. Okay? But does not foreground the idea of the public in his or her thoughts. However, Islamists, now the third category, Islamists are those who not only believe that Islam is a way of life, but also claims that it is a complete way of life, and claim that it is an ideal holistic religion with a political agenda of building a Sharia-centric Islamic state. Therefore, the general formula, according to my categorization in the book, is that all Muslims are not necessarily Islamic or Islamists, whereas all Islamic people are definitely Muslims but not necessarily Islamists, and all Islamists are certainly both Muslims and Islamic. The examples of Islamic organizations are Tablighi Jamaat, Jamiat Ulama Hind, etc. In other words, these organizations like Tablighi Jamaat or the Jamiat Ulama Hind, one can also talk about other Sufi sects, but they do not have an agenda of a kind of building an Islamic state. But they definitely are practicing Muslims, and they definitely treat religion, Islamic religion, in the private affair. So I am telling them as Islamic organizations or Islamic people. While the examples of Islamist organizations can be Jamaat Islami Hind, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Muslim Brotherhood, etc. That can be categorized as Islamist organizations because they have this political agenda to create a Sharia-centric Islamic state. However, Islamist organizations form a broad political spectrum and we can differentiate them into three distinct groups in terms of operational strategies and attendant tactical questions related to the modes of capturing political power. Number one, moderate Islamists, mainstream Islamists, and extremist Islamists. The moderate Islamists generally use and choose parliamentary democratic methods like participation in elections and mass mobilizations, like that of Jamaat-e-Islami in South Asia or Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, the Turkish Refa Party. Mainstream Islamists use both parliamentary methods and armed violence. I am not talking about extra-parliamentary and parliamentary because extra-parliamentary means also mobilization movements with other, but I am saying that kind of mixing parliamentary methods and armed violence like Hamas in Palestine and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Extremist Islamists, however, use only violent and terroristic methods like Al-Qaeda network, the Taliban in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the ISIS recently, the militant groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba, who sometimes operate in Kashmir. However, in this book, I am only interested in the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is a moderate Islamist organization, and its ideological articulations. Now, the term Islamism is primarily used in this book to connote a modern political ideology quite distinct from Islamic theology with its universalistic appeal and the particularistic ideologization of Islamic religion around certain key decontested concepts whose meanings are generally fixed by the prominent Islamist ideologues, while closing down ideological dissent over the use of accepted definitions of any particular political concept. What does it mean? I'm basically arguing, of course, I have elaborated this in the book. Basically, you have different ideologies, like for what we call that macro ideologies. So let's say you have liberalism and you have Marxism, you have conservatism and you have feminism, and similarly you have Islamism. Now, so how is ideology being framed? Now, the kind of theoretical framework that I am coming from, which is from Michael Frieden, is that ideologies are nothing but a kind of a assimilation of certain decontested concepts. What is decontestation? That you cannot contest a particular concept if within a particular, if you are believing in a particular ideological framework. So liberalism will say this is what justice is, this is what equality is. That is what democracy, that is what liberty. Marxism will disagree with it. Marxism will say, no, that is not what justice is. This is what justice is. That is not, your concept of liberty is actually hypocritical. It is not liberty. That is not democracy, you see. Conservatism will have very different notions of these normative concepts. Feminism would have a very different notion. Similarly, Islamism and the Islamist ideologues, they also have a kind of a fixation of meaning. So they will say that no, this is what justice is, that is what liberty is, that is what democracy is. And you cannot contest that. If you are contesting it, then you are outside the organization. So far you are agreeing with it, you are inside that fold. Okay? Now that does not mean that these meanings do not change. These meanings can change over a period of time, provided that you have a kind of reasonable debate. But that takes time. I mean, it does not overnight change your meaning. Suppose in the 1920s, if Islamists believe a certain form of justice, that does not mean that in the 1921 they will have a very different kind of a meaning. Nonetheless, Islamism can be defined as assigning political overtone to the religion of Islam, where Islam is regarded not simply as a religion but a political ideology comprising a set of political concepts with distinct political goals like the establishment of an Islamic state. Hence, for the Islamists, the religion of Islam in itself is a political ideology and a guide to programmatic political action. Thus, Islamism is the ideologization of Islam while presenting Islam as a totality by constructing it as a holistic way of life which has socio-economic, political, moral and spiritual goals while giving Islamic justifications for its specific modes of political thinking and action. So when Islamists urge adherence to Islamist totality, they hardly make any distinction between an ideological worldview and fundamental tenets of religion. In fact, they see Islam not as a religion but as an ideology. It is interesting to note that what scholars describe as Islamism, the Islamists describe as Islam. That is to say, the ideological articulations of Islamism by Islamists are justified in the name of Islam. Thus, for academicians, Islamism is an ideology, whereas for Islamists, Islam is the ideology. So we call it Islamism, right, from the outside. But Islamists, they think, they do not call it Islamism. They say it is Islam, right? Islam. This is the ideology. Islam is the ideology. So for scholars, Islamism is only a particular interpretation of Islam. Whereas for Islamists, their interpretation of Islam as a complete way of life is the only correct form of Islam, and hence all other interpretations where Islam is not presented as a totality violates the very spirit of Islam. It must be clear now that Islam, the religion, is different from Islamism, the political ideology. Just like there are fundamental differences between Hindu religion and the political ideology of Hindutva. Now, since my book focuses on Islamic political ideology, I have taken the case of the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is a major Islamist organization in contemporary South Asia. Why Jamaat-e-Islami? Because it was Maududi, the founder of Jamaat, had a profound influence over very significant Islamists of the 20th century, right from Sayyid Qutb of the Muslim Brotherhood, or to the Khomeini, Ali Shariati. So the other Islamist movements in the world. So Maududi was one of the forerunner in terms of articulating what would be the Islamic state look like, what would be an ideal Islamic economy, what would be the ideal Islamic state, what would be the ideal Islamic law, what would be the ideal Islamic family, all sort of things. So Jamaat-e-Islami in that sense is a very, very important then player, and Maududi certainly is one important player. But what I'm trying to make in this book is that, look, the literature on Islamism has a greater Middle Eastern kind of a biasness. It starts with the Arab world and it ends in Pakistan. But very less coverage has been done on India and Bangladesh, which is a relatively under-researched territory. Now, if you actually compare, if you actually calculate the Muslim population, which is the prime constituency of Islamism, of course not the only constituency, but the prime constituency of Islamism, then it is 20% of the total world's Muslim population. So with third and the fourth largest Muslim constitution after Indonesia and Pakistan. So, but not many, serious research has been done on this particular area, how Islamism operates in a Muslim minority context of India and in a Muslim majority context of Bangladesh. So here I try to make kind of an intervention. Now, firstly, in the book addresses how, in a contemporary globalized world, Islamists construct an antagonistic frontier and mobilize people behind their political project. Now, the interesting move that I am making is that in the book is that I am placing the political ideology of Islamism and the operation of the Islamists in their everyday politics within the context of neoliberalism. So in the kind of a context of globalized capitalism, which so far the literature on Islamism in this area has not done so. So in that case, I'm kind of situating neoliberalism as the larger kind of socio-economic context where Islamism is responding. How Islamism is responding to neoliberalism? Is it critiquing neoliberalism? Is it opposing neoliberalism? Is it negotiating with neoliberalism? What is happening there? Secondly, the book examines the dynamics of the formation of Islamist politics for struggle for hegemony and its failure to become a hegemonic force in Bangladesh. So basically there was a kind of a tussle between the Islamists and the anti-Islamists there, the so-called national populist or the secular kind of a pole there. And how Islamists are struggling for power there, right? Sometimes bit of success, sometimes they kind of receding. That kind of narrative is also coming in my book. Thirdly, the contradiction between Islamic universalism, oblique Islamist populism on the one hand, and the politics of Muslim particularism in India on the other is revealed in this study. How I am defining Islamic universalism or Islamist populism. Look, the Islamists believe that Islam is not only a religion for Muslims, it is a religion for the human beings, the humankind, as a whole. So in my book, particularly on the Indian chapters, particularly in chapter 2 and 3, I have shown how the Jamaat-e-Islami is specifically taking the cases of the Dalits, the tribals, some issues of women. They are opposing SEZs, particularly in Kerala, where their organization is more stronger than the rest of the country. So there is a kind of a Islamic universalist idea. But at the same time, they also have these pulls and pressures of communitarian kind of appeals, which makes it particularist. So where the Muslims, which is the prime constituency of Jamaat, their demands are also kind of getting more prioritized. In other words, when the non-Muslim section, which is the Dalits, the tribals, and let's say the working class or the peasantry, they beyond a point they cannot also identify with the Jamaat-e-Islami because with the name and all. So now maybe they have now changed. They have floated a political party, the Welfare Party of India, backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami. Maybe these are tactical questions. We don't know what will happen, but there is a limit of mobilization also. So there is a kind of tussle going on between the articulation of Islamic universalism that Islam is for all, but at the same time limited by the constraints of its prime constituency, which makes it also particularist. Fourthly, the book also deals with the Islamist cultural critique of atheism, blasphemy, live-in relationships, and homosexuality, which the Jamaat-e-Islami construe as products of Western cultural globalization. In this respect, I try to analyze why Islamists are antagonistic to such issues. Finally, this book traces the contemporary crisis of Islamist populism in providing an alternative to neoliberalism. Now, today, neoliberal capitalism is going through a global crisis. In this context, the book tries to answer the core question: can Islamism articulate a politics of alternative in a world marked by capitalist globalization and neoliberal consensus? Further questions related to the major theme are also addressed as follows. After the failure of the 20th century socialism, what happens to the promise and goal of Islamism in providing an alternative to capitalism? Can Islamism represent a politics of social transformation, or is it only limited to a peculiar politics of resistance and critique to neoliberal capitalism? Now here let us first discuss a little bit about Maududi's own views. When Maududi was writing, he was very much categorical that Islam is neither socialism nor capitalism. It's a middle path. Okay, so it's an Islamic middle path, right? Now I am then kind of interrogating: is it actually so? Is Islam then completely a middle path, or is it something else? Now, if you look at the writings of Maududi and Najatullah Siddiqui and let's say Fazlul Faridi and then Ghulam Azam in Bangladesh, then you will see that what Islamists, particularly the Islamic form of Islamism, which of course has a major influence on other Islamists in the world, they are at best arguing for an Islamic welfare state, right? Now this cherished idea of the welfare state is conflicting with the neoliberal form of capitalism, because the world has actually now moved, the global capitalist order actually moved from welfare capitalism to neoliberal capitalism. So there is a kind of a tussle of, there is a kind of a contradiction. What the Islamists are suggesting? Islamists are suggesting that market should be regulated. State should have some kind of a role in fixing prices, in fixing rent, higher wages, those kind of things. It should be interest-free economy, definitely. Okay. State should have a role in subsidies, in giving subsidies. State should have a role in education, healthcare, and all. And in fact, they have used the Islamic welfare state, that term, Islamic welfare state, in their pamphlets, in their manifestos also. So it is very much clear that they are a kind of a welfare state model. But this welfare state model is nothing but a project of welfare capitalism. So it is not like not capitalism, but it is some kind of a form of capitalism. Why? Islam has a very strong defense for a very sacred defense for private property and the private ownership of the major means of production. So that is a completely and if you actually read Maududi and Nejatullah Siddiqui and Ghulam Azam on these issues, you will find that there is hardly any difference between Lockean idea of acquisition and property or Nozick's idea of kind of a principle of justice by acquisition and transfer with that of the Islamist theoreticians. Because it's a sacred defense for private property rights, no alternative modes of production or exchange. So you have, let's say, gift and reciprocation was a mode of exchange in the tribal and agrarian communities, plunder and redistribution was a mode of exchange under feudalism, and under capitalism it is money, commodity, more money, so MC, M dash. Now Islamism is not providing any alternative mode of exchange, but it has thoroughly defended the private ownership of the major means of production and wage labor, right? So that is fine. Islamists are saying that profit and rent are absolutely halal and jais, right? So interest, which is something which is they are opposed to. Now, of course, surplus value has three forms. Marx has already shown us that profit, rent, and interest, these are the three forms of surplus value. So even if you are not in favor of interest, but you are definitely in favor of profit and rent, you are definitely in favor of private ownership of the major means of production and wage labor, so then what is an alternative to capitalism, right? At best, you are basically arguing a project of welfare capitalism. That is the kind of a tussle between this whole neoliberal form of capitalism and the Islamic welfare capitalism, and that is the kind of a cultural representation in the media or whatever in the Islam versus West kind of a tussle. Now, I'm going to end that because I'm close to the 25 minutes quota. I'm just going to read the last two paragraphs, and I think where we ended by this whole tussle between Islamism and West, because in West is just then a kind of a metaphor of neoliberal capitalism. Islamism is now the metaphor of the welfare capitalism in today's world, let's say. So now the binary opposition between Islamism and the West is not simply a construction of Orientalists, but it also emanates from the logical corollary of arguments of both Islamists and a section of postmodern celebration of Islamism, which seems to have uncritically accepted the project of Islamism, as I find in the work of Bobby Said. Bobby Said, who has written a book called A Fundamental Fear, Eurocentrism and Emergence of Islamism. It's a very theoretically sophisticated book. In fact, my book is a direct response to that book, right? It's a kind of a post-Marxist response to a postmodern celebration of Islamism. The portrayal of Islamism as a protest discourse against the Western hegemony only creates an image that both the Western power bloc and Islamism take each other seriously by giving due importance without being able to relegate each other into redundancy by constructing a no-enemy world. This kind of discourse, with its emphasis on an essential conflict between Islamism and West, in fact produces an all-encompassing discourse, reflecting a mirror image of Orientalism, where the debates are polarized on the lines of a fundamental contestation between two actors. It is no less than a politics of mutual othering between Orientalism and Islamist Occidentalism. Effectively, this eliminates, erodes, and obliterates any other critical political discourse that might not take a position either in favor of Western power bloc or Islamism.